Well, thank you for coming this morning. This is a press conference to talk about a very comprehensive review that we've just completed, an independent verification and validation assessment and corrective action plan of our enterprise resource planning program. Behind me, as part of the program this morning, we have the city manager, we have the new management team who are really the executive management group overseeing the implementation, our finance director, our HR director, our land use director, and our IT director, and they are all new to their jobs in a permanent position, and they are the people who are now the executive team to manage the implementation program going forward. I'm going to take this really kind of slowly because it's, I think, fairly complicated. I think anytime you talk about technology, software implementation, projects of this scale and scope, we tend to gloss over it rather quickly with the expectation that everybody can speak technology, and the fact is that for many of us, it's a foreign language, and we need to slow down and take it in pieces. So I'm going to do that. I will walk through some key findings, 3 questions that frame how we are going after this program, the corrective action steps that we've identified, and then the city manager will have some remarks as well, and then we'll take questions after that. I think members of the media and some folks we had enough packets to go hand out. We didn't know how many to produce. There are copies being made, and we'll put the whole thing on as a web posting as well. I think there are 3 or 4 key findings from the work of our exceptionally qualified and really very thoughtful consultant, Juan Blea. Findings are, first and foremost, this is an essential program for the city's future. I think from the McHard report to the City Council, to our department heads, to our staff, there is an overwhelming agreement that we absolutely need this program to be installed and to operate effectively for Santa Fe to be well managed and to have the information, the data available to our managers and to the public to be able to do their jobs effectively and well, to make good decisions, to know where we stand on financial matters, to be able to deliver high quality services through land use, to be able to fill our slots through an HR department that is up to speed. This program is actually long overdue for the city of Santa Fe, and so not completing this work is simply not an option. At the same time, our consultant found that if we continue to do things the way we've been doing them, the program is at risk of failure. And that is a very specific finding, and it is a very clear finding, and it challenges us to fix it. The third finding that our consultant made, and it is the last paragraph of his corrective action report, is that we in fact do have the resources and the capacity to fix the problems that we're dealing with. And I'm going to read from page 9 of his report. Conclusion, he says, the IV&V effort concluded on time and well within its established budget. In fact, it was on time and under budget. The main reason for this effort's success was the support from the leadership team. While there are significant changes required that may need a significant amount of effort, as evidenced by this study, the City of Santa Fe has the internal capacity or capability to achieve its stated goals. The City of Santa Fe has the internal capability to achieve its stated goals. By restructuring Project Andale, organizing its compositional projects into a singular, from a timeline and budget perspective, effort, and providing a clear IT plan for technology, systems analysis, and data management, the City of Santa Fe can remediate the challenges encountered within Project Andale. Moreover, in a conversation I had with Juan, because I did ask him to sit down with me and give me a very extensive and complete briefing, he offered the following observations about his experience in working with the city and in going through his month-long effort to do this IV&V report. He followed the actual report with this contextual material. First, he said, "I have never been provided with as much support, candor, and willingness to hear, quote-unquote, bad news as I did during this undertaking, and I've never seen an executive leadership team willing to face their circumstances and seek opportunities to improve. This was the most honest undertaking with which I've ever participated." The most honest undertaking. To put the ERP into further context, he wrote, according to a study done by an article published in Fortune magazine, over 90% of ERP implementations are late or over budget. And according to another study, only 33% of implementations succeed, which means that at least 66% have a failure rate. Within the technology sector, ERP implementations are considered extremely high-risk undertakings due to high costs and unclear desired results. No one, he wrote, no one I interviewed or spoke with tried to obfuscate or deflect anything about Project Andale status. The subject matter experts within the city staff are professional and knowledgeable. And while there may be cultural challenges, I truly believe city staff will pull together and accomplish the city's objectives. I truly believe city staff will pull together and accomplish the city's objectives. There is strong foundation of knowledge within the city upon which the program can move forward. There appears to be a solid working relationship between the leadership team. Now those comments are not in the documents that you were provided. Those were a conversation that I had with Juan, but I think they provide much needed context. It is important not only to understand how difficult this kind of work is, but what the actual resources are within the city government to achieve the work after we take corrective measures. Now, I want to focus on three questions that I think frame our report to the public today. Question number one is, how did we get here? Question number two is, where are we? Question number three is, where do we go from here? How did we get here? Well, this project started in March of 2017 when the administration before I arrived launched an ambitious ERP initiative designed to modernize the city's badly outdated technology systems. It included a variety of IT efforts. Kronos, designed to upgrade the city's timekeeping and leave management systems. Telestaff, to manage the complex shifting schedule requirements of police and fire. Tyler Munis Financials, which modernizes the city's financial management systems. Tyler Munis Human Capital Management, which upgrades the city's outdated HR management systems. Tyler Land Use Intergov, which improves the technology used by our land use department so that we can more quickly and efficiently process applications for permits. And Munis Work Orders, which will upgrade the way the city manages its fleet and other assets. At the time that those were initiated, the city proposed a management structure to oversee the work to put those into effect. And I believe in your packet you have a chart that our consultant produced for us from the original documents that outline the management structure that the city proposed to use at that time. At the time, the city allocated a budget, approximately $8.2 million, and suggested that it would take 8 years to fully implement all of these programs. That was how we got started down this road with trying to upgrade the city's information technology operating systems. Along the way, and I think you have a timeline that lays much of this out in much more detail than I'm going to take to do this morning. Along the way, there were a number of different steps. The city contracted with Barry Dunn to be a third-party project manager. Different pieces of the program were in fact implemented and completed. Kronos and others, InterGov was begun. And there were also some pauses taken while we assessed how well the city was doing in implementing this work. At a particular point in time, we got a series of warning flags that went up, provided both by our staff, who were concerned about the way the work was being done, our new management directors, and Barry Dunn, each of whom said we need to look carefully at whether or not we are on track or on budget. We got a memorandum from Barry Dunn that offered the city a series of choices to change the timeline and the budget for implementing the programs. Our team looked at the proposal from Barry Dunn and said, frankly, we don't have the information we need to make that decision. They offered us a set of options to delay implementation by a year, 9 months, 6 months, and rather than choosing any of those options, we chose a different route, suggested, I think the credit for this goes to Mary McCoy from our finance department, our director, who said it's time to do an IV&V and to actually do an assessment from a third party to look at where we are and to give a very careful outside review of where the program is and what we should do going forward. That project was budgeted and in both money and time to take 4 weeks. We now have that report. We got it on Monday, and it was on time and under budget, and it told us what we needed to know. It tells us where we are now. It says that we need to make changes. It says that we have the capacity to make those changes. And it says that we, by taking corrective actions, can put the ERP system on track and bring it into effect, which is what the city really needs to have happen. I think the report makes it clear that there were a number of problems that have afflicted the implementation of the program. Perhaps the most serious one was a decision made from the beginning about how to structure the management of the program from the get-go. And it is that I think is the first and most important corrective measure that the city is taking and to some extent has already begun to take. Now you have in your packets a 10-point corrective action plan. And the corrective action plan describes where we're going from here. It starts with changing the management structure and with creating a clear management structure with an internal on-site program manager backed by an executive team that includes our directors of IT, finance, land use, and HR, the clients for the implementation of these software programs, as well as appointing the city manager as the program sponsor and the mayor's office as the executive oversight of the entire undertaking. It includes, as a second point, establishing a comprehensive program timeline and budget. And it's interesting and important to note how when dealing with things like technology, the language that we use actually matters significantly, and that's why having a subject matter expert like Juan come in and give us a third-party assessment gives us a different line of sight into how we've been doing this work. This ERP program is not a project. It is an overarching program. It consists of smaller independent projects, but to see it as a project is really to misuse the language of technology. And so it is clear that we need a comprehensive program timeline and budget so that we have a line of sight across all of these projects that gives us a sense of where we are, how we're doing, how much we're spending, and when we have the deliverables coming into effect. Third step is to evaluate the role of Barry Dunn. Barry Dunn had been hired to be the program, or as the language had it originally, project director. We will be filling that role with an on-site program manager. We will be reevaluating the role of Barry Dunn going forward. We are going to, as I said, operate the effort as a program, but also recognize there are multiple projects and that each project needs to be tracked independently, but the leadership staff needs to be able to look through and across those projects to see how we're doing and to look at an integrated timeline and budget. Step 5 is to clearly identify staff roles. Here again, language makes a difference. We've been talking since I took office about allocating staff time from our team to do training. In fact, that's a misnomer. We are not doing training. We are asking the staff to play a fundamental role in mapping our business processes as they need to be done in the future and installing those maps into the software. By calling it training, we're really misdescribing the work that we're asking our staff to do. We do not have the software to train them to. They play an integral and significant role in mapping the processes and putting those maps into the software. We need also to be sure, in terms of staffing, that we have the staff resources to do that correctly. And within the IT department, we need to make sure that we have positions and staffing that can provide the necessary administrative and technical oversight. And I would compare this, if you're trying to put this into the context of other corrective action that the city has done in the last 6 months. If you remember the audit that we filed, we said at that time, in the context of the McHard report, that we would be adding to the finance department a comptroller, a position that hadn't previously existed, in order to provide the correct amount of oversight and qualifications inside the city to do that function. This is a comparable problem, except in the area of technology. We need to add the correct functions inside the IT department with the correct staffing to provide administrative and technical oversight comparable in its own way to what a comptroller has been doing for us in the finance department. And I would note that we recently celebrated inside our finance department, as we prepare the new audit, we are 6 months ahead of where we were last year in producing that audit, because we have taken the remedial action to have the right staffing to do the right work. Step 6, do first things first and set the right priorities. We will be, with the help of the new management team, refocusing the work program to take on the must-haves first. There are different modules inside all of these software programs. We are going to focus on the must-have modules first and get the first things done first. Step 7, develop and utilize a critical path management approach. This was outlined in the consultant's report as a series of gates and milestones with entrance and exit criteria so that we are able to track our progress in a very methodical way as we implement the software. Step 8, pair the identification of risk with the mitigation of risk. As I said in quoting our consultant's comments, ERP systems are inherently risky. They're risky because the technology is complicated, but they're also risky because external changes alter the context within which the work is being done. So, for example, in the period between 2017, when this project was launched, and where we are today, we have had a new administration take office. We have had a new city manager take office. We have had new department heads assume the responsibility for key departments. All of those are fundamental changes of the managerial context within which we're implementing this program. Those represent a risk factor. You can mitigate for that risk, but you have to acknowledge it and deal with it up front. We now, with the different management structure, will identify risks and deal with them in a very forthright way. Step number 9, identified by our consultant, and very much something we all agree to inside city management. We need to implement a citywide IT technology plan, systems analysis, and data management improvements. So while we are at the same time refocusing this project into the must-have modules, and in a sense shrinking our focus to do what we need to do first, we also need to expand our focus and see what the other components need to be in order to have a comprehensive IT plan for the city. One very simple example is that in order to run the ERP system, it has to sit on an upgraded Microsoft platform. That is a larger platform that will run the ERP system. So while we are simultaneously focusing on implementing the ERP system, we will also be looking at a much broader IT plan for the city that will bring all of our operations up to 21st century contemporary standards of operation. And if you look at the Modernizing Santa Fe, mapping the modules in the ERP program, you'll see there are some components that go well beyond the ERP operation itself, including a Windows 10 upgrade where the status is on track, an Adobe eSign implementation, which will give us the capacity to do electronic signatures. These are all competencies the city needs to have to be run in a way that reflects best practice in 2018 in public management. The 10th item on our corrective action plan is to continue with these periodic reviews. Just as we are in the wake of our audit, our city audit, indicated we would be undertaking 10 or so audits in the life of our financial reporting, we are going to incorporate regular independent assessments into our corrective action program. There's nothing more useful than a third-party outside review of how we're doing, and as our consultant said, he was met with honesty and forthrightness and with transparency. That's the spirit it takes in order to get programs on track and running properly. That's what we're doing with our audit, with our finances. That's what we're going to do with technology and with our IT and ERP implementation. So continuing to use IV&V assessments at regular stages will give us a clear-eyed third-party view into how we're doing and give us more corrective actions if we need to take them on an ongoing basis. Now, I would conclude my part of this press conference simply by saying that this work that we're talking about today is exactly the work that I was elected to do. This is the work of changing the way the city is managed. This is the work of bringing Santa Fe city management into alignment with best practices all over the country. This is how a city should be run. We should be willing to look at our problems and come up with corrective actions to solve them. It's what the McHard report promised. It's why I met week after week with our managers in going through the McHard report findings. It's why the audit was met with a corrective action plan at that time. This is no different. This is what good management looks like. And the credit should go to the city staff who've been working very hard to implement the ERP system and have been reporting to us about their challenges, and now we are taking action to address those challenges. The credit should go to the new city manager and to our new department heads who are absolutely unblinking in looking at this and saying we can fix it because we must fix it. And it should go to our consultant, who I think delivered an outstanding piece of work that gives us a roadmap to go forward and to fix the ERP system, to get it on track, and to do the work that we all need done, whether you're a resident or a staff member or a department head. We absolutely need this ERP system and the other IT upgrades in order to have Santa Fe be a well-run, well-managed city that meets the expectations and exceeds the demands of the people who live here. So with that, I will turn it over to the city manager, Erik Lichtenberg, to say a few words as well.
Thank you, Mayor, and good morning to you all. Thanks for being here to participate in this information sharing with us. The Mayor just did a really good job of summarizing the ERP in general and the IV&V. He started with the findings. He then went into the where, what, and why of both the ERP and the IV&V. And then he talked about our corrective action plan, all of which are extremely important to understand the width and the breadth of this to the city of Santa Fe, to our employees, and to the citizens. I actually want to talk a little bit about the city of Santa Fe specifically and our team, both the folks that are behind me and in the city of Santa Fe in general. I'm going to do that by saying two things that I am quite proud of and that I think you all should be proud of as well. The first one is that I'm proud of our management team for being courageous. To expose yourself like we did in opening up to this IV&V is a scary thing to do. It's scary to have somebody come and look at the things that you've been doing for months and years and take a critical look and tell you, well, this is where you're right and this is where you might have gone wrong. And our management team did that courageously. Not only those folks that are standing behind me, but those managers in the city of Santa Fe who are not and who participated willingly in this assessment. So I am proud of their courage. Moreover, I'm quite proud of the city of Santa Fe employees as a whole. These employees have been working hard on this ERP for over a year now. And they've been doing what they were asked to do day in, day out. This is not a failure. This project will be a success. And in large part, the success will be because of the hard work that these employees have done since we started doing this project. And for that, not only am I proud, but I think the city employees should be proud as well. The mayor said this in his closing, and I think it's really important for me to say as well. What you see here today and what you've seen with this IV&V, that's good management. This project was set up and it was designed over a year ago. And it would make not a whole lot of sense for us as people or us as managers to assume that the original design is one that has to be continued to the end. Part of good management is evaluating how things are designed, how you're using your resources, and what changes you need to make to successfully achieve your desired end result. That's what we've done here. That is good management. As the mayor said, that is what he was elected to do. And I can tell you, that is what he hired me to do. Moreover, as we looked at this management team that has been assembled behind us, and that team that exists across the city, that's their expectation as well. It's to manage the city resources appropriately to achieve a desired end result. I am totally confident, having seen the results of the IB&V, that as we dig into this corrective action plan, we are going to find a successful end result with this program. That is in large part due to the management team and the great city employees we have. Those two things I am quite proud of, and I am confident that we can meet this goal. I'd now like to turn it back to the mayor for any conclusion he might like to give.
Thanks, Chief. A couple of other statistics pop out. According to our consultant's report, we are roughly 35% of the way there already. So it would be a mistake when you use language like failing or failure to ignore the fact that there is success. This is not a zero-sum game. This is not all failure, all success. There are challenges ahead, but roughly 35% of the program has been installed. Much of it is working exactly as expected. So again, if you look at the documentation you've been provided on the components of the overall software program, you'll see that we are experiencing complete or substantially complete results with Kronos and Telestaff. We're looking at the implementation of Windows 10, Adobe eSign, and Munis Work Orders is in early stages. EnerGov is on track. So I think while it is clear that we have work to do managerially to make adjustments, fixes, and improvements to the way we're doing things, we are at a 35%, roughly a 35% completion rate as our consultant found. With that said, I will do my very best to answer questions if you have them. Yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor, you mentioned that the software sits on a platform. Now, is the software being able to integrate the different modules that you talked about, or is it a software that integrates other software in a compatible, or is that going in this time?
Yeah, I could take that. Good morning. I'm sorry, what is your name? Patricio. My name is Joshua Alicio. Pleasure. So to understand your question, you're asking where does the software sit, and then if it actually brings everything into one area. Is that?
I just wondered if it's modules within its own software infrastructure, or is there other software that's being integrated?
Right.
That talks to each other?
No, very, very good question. So to answer your question, this is a software as a service, which essentially is, and again, I promised myself I wouldn't use technical jargon, but I think we've all heard about the cloud, right? So it's sitting on in a server farm. Tyler is our product of choice. And so with that, our main goal is to centrally manage as much as possible. And so what we see today is the financials, the human resource, capital management module, as well as the land use module. And so our main objective is to ensure that it all comes together and that we are managing it centrally. Our goal is to ensure that the silos that are out there today, that we bring them together. And that's really the basis of the enterprise resource planning, is to ensure that we have a complete insight from a central location. And yes, there will be plans in the future here shortly that will be integrating other products into that. But let me make a real quick point here, is that enterprise resource planning is an evolution. And I think the mayor hit that right on the head, is that this is going to take time. And we are going to hit the priority modules first to make sure that our finance system, our HR system, our land use system is not only making it better for the city of Santa Fe employees, but for our constituents. And that really is our goal here. Hopefully that answered your question, Patricio. Okay. Thank you.
I have to say I'm impressed with what you have done and what you're going to do. Thank you.
Thank you for asking the question. Yes, sir. I don't know the answer to that question. That predated my arrival in the city. I assume that what happened, this is an assumption, I probably shouldn't make it, but my guess is that they sat down as a team and said, how could we set this up best? They may very well have looked at other communities, but I really wasn't party to that.
The person who's leading this project at the city and they have recently got to join the city about how much responsibility lies on her.
Well, I don't, that's one of those questions that I know you're obligated to ask. I think the way I look at it is slightly different, which is, as I said, we inherited an approach to this project and a set of assumptions about how best to do it. I think the reason we hit the pause button and asked for an IV&V was because we knew that there might be other ways to do it. And I think when you look at it systemically, the original system was really the flaw, not any individual. The assumptions about how best to run the program turned out not to be correct. I think and the challenge for us, and the reason we've put together this 10-point corrective action plan, is really to focus on solving the problem that we have, and not look to identify any individual or person who we would attempt to blame. Well, first of all, the notion of a resistance plan the first I knew about it was when I read the newspaper this morning. I think it's not anything that has been discussed in city government, and certainly isn't anything I've ever been approached about. So I guess you would have to say it was news to me, and I think it was news to most of the people who've been associated with this program. Let's let somebody else have a turn.
Morning.
Morning.
You mentioned that the Gonzalez administration predicted or planned $8.2 million over 8 years on this project. You've reevaluated that now, and now you're saying you're 35% along the way of completion. So what are the costs and what is the length of time you're expecting?
Well, terrific question, and I will give you a brief answer, and I think Mary may want to go into a little bit more detail. I can tell you, in terms of information that we'll be making available, this press conference is not the last. It's the first, because we actually only got this document from our consultant on Monday. So we're processing it in some ways the same way everybody else is. What we've been able to determine is, first of all, because of the way the program was structured, we've been working to look at the expenditures and pull them together into a single line of sight. From the best information we have to date, we've spent $3.7 million of the $8.2 million, and in the summer of 2018, the council voted an additional $200,000 for Barry Dunn's contract to keep them working. Monday evening, there will be a meeting of the Finance Committee, and at that meeting, our Finance Director, Mary McCoy, will be presenting more data, more financial data, to update the Finance Committee to give you the information give them the information you asked for. Point number 2 in our corrective action plan is to establish a comprehensive program timeline and budget. And I think that is as we straighten out the management structure, the task of the management team and a program manager is then to delve into our budget and timeline and deliverables and bring us a up-to-date program plan for implementation. But let me let Mary say a few more words about finance, and there'll be more Monday if you want to go to that meeting.
Right, so the Finance Committee meeting is Monday, November 5th.
Tell everybody your name.
My name is Mary McCoy. I'm the Finance Director. And so the preliminary figures we have are 3.7 million for expenditures year to date. As my colleagues have also stated, we are in the process of evaluating the timeline going forward and the resources we'll need going forward. So that will be updated as well over the course of the next few weeks. So this is a preliminary look into where we're at this point in the program, and that will be forthcoming. So we have identified the sources for the revenue, essentially, to fund this program going forward, and we will be identifying the uses, the expenditures, on how we can proceed forward on this critical path.
And I should point out, thank you, Mary. I should point out that there are, if you look at the corrective action plan and you treat it as a management roadmap, you'll be able to detect within it a series of steps that will have budgetary implementations. Sometimes it might be a saving, sometimes it might be an expenditure if we're adding staffing positions, and additional expenditures for more IV&V reports in the future. So I think the work of reformulating both the budget and the management structure and the timeline is really an entire management task that needs to be done going forward. And that's really the work of the new team. Yep, follow-up question?
Please, sir. You mentioned that Barry Dunn was going to be replaced by an internal project manager. Has that happened, or is that in process?
That's in process. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Yes, that's correct.
And then, just to follow up Daniel's question, regardless of kind of the specifics of what he reported on today, has there been, in general, any problem getting people to cooperate with people who have resisted the
I would never use that word. I think that's an inapt term. I think what we've seen, and if you read our consultant's report, there are a series of very frank quotes about problems from the staff level that they've encountered. I think they run the gamut from feeling poorly utilized, poorly managed, not listened to, but I don't detect, and I don't think our consultant detected, an unwillingness to participate in the software upgrades and implementation. I think it's a question, again, in the same spirit that we've seen with other city programs, that we have to do a better job of identifying the tasks, managing people, providing the adequate resources and time for them to do their jobs. Dan, you had a follow-up? Well, I don't agree with your characterization. Our office didn't withhold anything. We were given a request for public documents on Friday by, actually not by you, but by a different journalist, and that that allowed us to put our papers together and get our documentation together. In fact, we're hours ahead of the deadline. We're producing this material before the end of day on Wednesday, which is what the city attorney has told us is the requirement for meeting the public documentation request. So, I think you may be you're obviously entitled to be unhappy with our rate, but you are not accurate in saying we've withheld any documents. Well, all I know is that the request that I was received came through the city attorney's office. Any other questions? Yes, sir, Daniel.
Have the city resolved the issue of providing merit pay, some sort of financial incentive for employees who are really leading and implementing this?
Good question. The answer is we have not yet resolved that question to my satisfaction. It continues to be this goes back to the point I made earlier about resources and staff allocation. and we're still working on it. If that's all we have, thank you all for coming. I appreciate your time and your interest. I think this is, as I said earlier, absolutely critical to the city's future, and we will get it right. Thank you.